What is going on, everybody? What is going on, the Catch fam? My name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we are hopping into my must-start players for Week 6 of the 2022 fantasy football season. If you guys do enjoy today's content, be sure to hit that like button on the way in. Hit that subscribe button. Of course, if you're new to the channel, really does help us out when you guys hit that like and consider subscribing. Feel free to drop any comments, questions, concerns pertaining to the 2022 fantasy football season down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Without further ado, let's hop into today's video. All right, first on today's list, we've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Kind of cheating here, but both of Tom Brady's primary targets going into this Week 6 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolute must-starts on your fantasy roster. The Steelers are the worst team in the National Football League from a fantasy perspective against opposing receivers. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both have at least 12 fantasy points in their last two games, at least 6 targets, and at least 59 receiving yards each. So we're hoping for a little bit higher ceilings there, like we saw out of Mike Evans in Week 4 with a 30-point fantasy performance and 2 touchdowns. I really think this is one of those weeks where, for whatever reason, if you own Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on your roster, you could start both of them. But I definitely think if Evans or Godwin are sitting on your bench, they absolutely need to be in your starting lineups moving into Week 6. All right, we've got Melvin Gordon of the Denver Broncos next up on the list. Guys, the Chargers have been a bottom 5 unit against opposing running backs for a majority of the season so far. But after last week, they are officially the worst team in the league through the first 5 weeks of the season against opposing running backs. In my mind, Melvin Gordon is a must start in this matchup. I'm not necessarily worried about Mike Boone or Latavius Murray. The only aspect that I am worried about is that there is potential that Melvin Gordon could come into Sunday morning as questionable. He is dealing with a neck and rib injury, but there's still a strong likelihood that he suits up and plays. So if Gordon is healthy going into Sunday's slates of games, I absolutely think he should be in your starting lineup. And if he is deemed to not play, then I think that Mike Boone is actually a pretty strong start. Regardless, we just want to think of it this way. Denver Broncos running backs are facing the worst team in the league against opposing running backs here in Week 6, so we want them in our starting lineups moving into Week 6. All right, next up, we've got Zach Ertz, tight end of the Arizona Cardinals, coming in as your tight end 4 so far on the season. He has at least 10 points in every game this season in full PPR. He comes out to 12.9 points per game on the season so far. We all know he's playing phenomenal football, but you guys have sent me a lot of rosters and had a lot of questions about the tight end position. I've seen a lot of rosters out there where, you guys own Zach Ertz and you own Kyle Pitts, or you own Zach Ertz, you own George Kittle as well. Whatever it may be, if Zach Ertz is one of the 2 tight ends on your team, I do think that Zach Ertz needs to be in starting lineups this week. Nothing crazy if you own a Kelsey or Andrews, but really outside of that, I love Zach Ertz this week. He's going up against Seattle. They are the worst team in the league against opposing tight ends. And not only is the matchup great, but I think the game script here is great. I think we're going to have a really good game script coming from the Seahawks and Cardinals game for a lot of different players. So I really like Ertz's matchup moving into Week 6. All right, next up on the list, we've got basically the only must-start player from Week 5 who gave us a hit last week. That's Madre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. At the moment, Damian Harris is listed as questionable, dealing with an injury, so that would really help boost Stevenson's fantasy stock for the day. But outside of that, he's averaging 12.6 points per game, full PPR scoring formats, and in his last 3 games, and 2 out of those 3 matchups, he's had at least 19.5 fantasy points. He's definitely playing very good football. On top of that, we know that the Patriots have to run the football right now. The quarterback position is an absolute shambles, and the Browns are one of the worst teams in the league, coming in at 28 overall against opposing running backs. And once again, similar to the last matchup we talked about, I like this matchup from a fantasy perspective between the Patriots and the Browns. Overall, there is a lot to be happy about if you are a Madre Stevenson owner moving into Week 6 of the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, last on the list for today, we've got the GOAT himself. We've got Tom Brady. I've definitely seen enough fantasy rosters, especially with these slow starts to season for Brady, where there are enough of you out there who own Tom Brady and another quarterback that you may not be considering Tom Brady here in week 6. But listen, the Steelers are one of the worst teams in the league, ranked at 25 overall against opposing quarterbacks. We already talked about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You know, the Steelers are the worst team in the league against opposing receivers at the moment. So with that combination with Godwin and Evans being healthy, I think Brady is in suit for his best game of the season so far. And like I mentioned, the slow start to the season for Brady, but in his last 2 matchups, 22.5 points per game on average, with his receivers coming back healthy in the last 2 weeks, or his primary receivers, I should say. Brady has looked like Tom Brady, what we expected him to look like coming in to the season. So I really like these Buccaneers overall. I like Leonard Fournette this week. I think it's going to be a good offensive outing for Brady and the Buccaneers, who I think are in need of an offensive statement game, right? We really haven't seen it so far on the season. I mean, even last week against the Falcons, right, Brady only had 19.7 fantasy points. Didn't really feel like a statement game, especially since the Falcons started to crawl back into that game. So I think that the Buccaneers come out guns blazing. I love this matchup for Brady. I love it for really all of the Bucs offense, but I think Brady, who may be a player who you have other options at the quarterback position, you may be considering someone else at, I think that Brady is an absolute must start here in week 6. That'll do it for today's video. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's must start players. This is a newer segment on the channel. This is a little bit of a shorter segment as well going into each weekend, but let me know how you guys think each player is going to perform, and let me know if you guys are starting any of these players, and if you aren't, who are you starting over them, and vice versa as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. If you guys are new to the channel, hit that like button as well. It really does help out the channel when you guys hit the like and consider subscribing, and feel free to drop any comments, questions, concerns pertaining to the 2022 fantasy football season down below, and be sure to look out for our next fantasy Q&A live stream. We would love to have you there. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening, and remember, you saw it here at the catch.